You finally did it. You log into your banking app, wait a second for the screen to load, and there it is. 6 figures. $100,000. It took years of skipping holidays, driving a car you didn't really love, and obsessively tracking every single purchase. You feel like you finally won the financial game. But as you stare at that number, a weird, uncomfortable feeling creeps in. Instead of feeling rich, you suddenly feel completely terrified of losing it. And ironically, that exact fear is what is going to guarantee you lose it. Here is the hardest, most counterintuitive truth about building wealth. The exact habits that get you to your first $100,000 are the complete opposite of the habits you need to reach $1 million. Most people get this phase completely wrong. They hit this massive milestone, they get scared of making a mistake, and they just leave the money sitting in a savings account, letting inflation quietly steal their purchasing power every single day. The real question is, how do you flip the switch from being a professional saver to a strategic investor? What do you actually do the day after you hit your goal? Today, I am giving you a complete 20-minute masterclass on the exact playbook you need the moment your net worth crosses 6 figures. Your brain is actively lying to you about what financial safety actually looks like. When you were starting from absolute zero, hoarding cash was the right move. Every dollar in your checking account felt like a physical brick, building a wall between you and financial disaster. The goal was to accumulate, protect, and hold on tight. But once you hit $100,000, that wall becomes a prison. This is a concept in finance called cash drag. If you leave $100,000 sitting in a standard bank account, you aren't just breaking even. You are actively, continuously losing money. With average historical inflation, that cash loses about $3,000 of purchasing power every single year. Over a decade, you could lose a third of your wealth's actual value without ever spending a single dime. It is an invisible tax on your anxiety. The very first thing I would do if I hit this milestone today is right-size my cash. You do not need 6 figures in an emergency fund unless your monthly expenses are completely astronomical. I would sit down and calculate exactly what 3 to 6 months of bare bones living expenses looks like. For most people, that's somewhere between $15,000 and $25,000. I would take that specific amount, park it in a high-yield savings account, and put up a mental firewall around it. That is the insurance policy. The rest of that money, the remaining $75,000 or $80,000, has to be given a job. It can no longer sit on the couch. It has to go to work. Saving is a defensive game, but real generational wealth is built on offense. The legendary billionaire investor Charlie Munger famously said that accumulating the first $100,000 from a standing start is a bitch, but you have to do it. Why is the first $100,000 so brutally hard? Because it is generated almost entirely by your own sweat. It comes from your raw labor, your strict budgeting, your skipped dinners out, and your sheer willpower. Every single one of those dollars represents hours of your life that you traded away. You were the engine, but the next $100,000 shouldn't come from your sweat. It should come from the money itself. Once you hit this milestone, you have to completely shift your identity. You have to stop aggressively stressing over $4 lattes and start obsessing over asset allocation. You have to realize that you are no longer just an employee working for a paycheck. You are now the CEO of your own capital. Your $100,000 is essentially an army of 100,000 little employees. If you leave them in a checking account, you are paying them to stand around the break room, doing absolutely nothing. The psychological leap here is monumental. You have to unlearn the extreme frugality that got you here. Frugality has diminishing returns. You can only cut your expenses to zero, but your earning potential and your money's earning potential is mathematically infinite. The transition from saver to investor requires you to trust systems over your own raw labor. The moment you see 6 figures, your brain releases a massive dose of dopamine and whispers 3 very dangerous words. I deserve it. And you do. You worked incredibly hard. But this is exactly where the vast majority of people sabotage their path to $1 million. It is called lifestyle creep.
and it is the silent killer of wealth. You hit the milestone, so you decide to upgrade your car. You decide to move into a luxury apartment. You start flying premium economy. Suddenly, your baseline living expenses jump by 30%.
Here is the mathematical problem with that. If your expenses go up, the amount of money you need in your emergency fund has to go up. The amount of money you need to eventually retire goes up drastically. By upgrading your lifestyle too quickly, you are moving the finish line further away from yourself, while simultaneously slowing down your speed. But completely depriving yourself is just as dangerous, because you will eventually burn out and resent the process. So if I hit $100,000 today, I would implement the 10% rule. I would take exactly 10% of the milestone, $10,000, and I would blow it on something that brings me genuine, lasting joy, a massive trip, a kitchen renovation, a hobby I've always wanted to try. You celebrate the milestone deliberately, and then the other 90% is completely locked down and deployed into investments. You control the lifestyle creep by scheduling your rewards, rather than letting your daily spending slowly bleed your wealth dry. If you don't build a shield around your money, the government will quietly take a massive portion of your lifetime wealth before you even notice. When beginners finally decide to invest, they usually just download a shiny app, open a standard brokerage account, and start buying stocks. That is a massive mistake when you have real capital, because every time you earn a dividend or sell for a profit, you are triggering a tax event. If I had $100,000 to deploy, my absolute first priority would be pushing that money through what I call the Tax Shield Waterfall. Step 1 in the waterfall is looking at my workplace 401k, or equivalent retirement account. I would immediately increase my paycheck contributions to hit the maximum annual limit, not just the employer match, the absolute legal maximum. Why? Because this lowers your taxable income right now. If you are in a high tax bracket, maxing out your 401k can save you thousands and thousands of dollars in income taxes this exact year. Since your paychecks will shrink, you use your pile of cash savings to supplement your living expenses. You are essentially moving money from a taxable bank account into a tax-sheltered retirement account. Step 2 in the waterfall is the health savings account, or HSA, if you are on a high-deductible health plan. The HSA is the holy grail of the U.S. tax code. It is completely tax-free when the money goes in, tax-free as it grows, and tax-free when you pull it out for medical expenses. And after age 65, you can pull it out for any reason, treating it just like a traditional retirement account. I would max this out immediately and invest every penny of it. Step 3 is the Roth IRA. You fund this with money you've already paid taxes on, but every dollar of compound growth over the next 30 years is entirely tax-free. If you make too much money to contribute directly, you do a few extra clicks and execute a backdoor Roth IRA. You do not want to give the IRS a single dollar more of your wealth than is legally required. You protect the growth first in all of these sheltered accounts, and only then does whatever is left over go into your normal taxable brokerage account. So you've carved out your emergency fund, you've mapped out your tax shields, and you have, say, $70,000 ready to actually put into the market. The next logical question paralyzes almost everyone. Do you take all $70,000 and invest it tomorrow morning? Or do you drip feed it into the market, investing $5,000 a month for the next 14 months? This is the classic debate between lump sum investing and dollar cost averaging. And you have to understand the difference between the mathematical answer and the psychological answer. Mathematically, lump sum investing wins about 68% of the time. The stock market goes up more often than it goes down. So statistically, getting your money into the market as fast as possible gives it the most time to grow. Waiting on the sidelines just means you are likely to end up paying higher prices later. But humans are not spreadsheets. If you take the entire $70,000 that took you 5 years to save, invest it on a Tuesday, and the market crashes by 20% on a Wednesday, you will be psychologically devastated. You might panic, sell everything at a loss, and swear off investing for the rest of your life. If I were in this position, and I knew I was prone to anxiety, I would choose dollar cost cost averaging. I would set up an automated system to invest $10,000 on the first of every month for 7 months. It mathematically slightly lowers my expected return, but it buys me an incredible amount of emotional insurance. You have to pick the strategy that allows you to sleep at night, because the worst investing strategy is the one you abandon in a panic. When people suddenly have a lot of cash, they feel this sudden, inexplicable urge to get fancy. They start looking at angel investing in their friend's startup, picking individual tech stocks, or buying physical real estate before they even know how to fix a leaky toilet. Complexity is the absolute enemy of execution, and at this stage, execution is everything. To deploy this capital, I wouldn't do anything flashy. I wouldn't try to outsmart Wall Street. I would simply buy the entire global economy. I would take the bulk of that money and put it into low-cost, broad market index funds like the S&P 500 or a total stock market fund. Here is why this is so insanely powerful once you hit 6 figures. The math of compounding finally starts to become visible to the naked eye. When you only have $1,000 invested, an 8% return gives you $80 for the year. It feels like a joke. You wonder why you even bothered. But when you have $100,000 invested, an average year in the market means your money just generated $8,000 out of thin air. That is an extra $660 a month. Your portfolio is now essentially working a highly efficient part-time job on your behalf, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without taking sick days or complaining to HR. You don't need to read corporate balance sheets. You don't need to try and beat the market. You just need to get your money into the market and let it ride the natural, inevitable upward trajectory of human progress and corporate profits. It is the ultimate hack for effortless, friction-free wealth generation. Money has absolutely zero value unless it changes the way you experience a Tuesday morning. The saddest thing I see in the personal finance world is people who hit $100,000 don't change their daily life at all, set a new goal for $200,000, and stay completely miserable at a job they absolutely hate. They become the richest person in the graveyard. Having 6 figures in the bank is not just about compounding interest and line graphs going up. It is about leverage. For the first time in your entire adult life, you are no longer financially desperate. If your boss is toxic and demands you cancel your family vacation, you can look them in the eye and say no, because you know you have the financial runway to walk away and be perfectly fine for years. If you have an idea for a business you've always wanted to start, you finally have the capital to fund it without taking on toxic, high-interest bank debt. If you are deeply burned out and losing your mind, you can afford to take a 6-month sabbatical to travel, sleep, and remember who you actually are. Once the safety net is built and the investments are automated, the ultimate return on investment isn't a higher dividend yield. It is your own freedom. It is the ability to dictate how you spend your time. Reaching $100,000 is one of the hardest things you will ever accomplish. It requires a level of focus, sacrifice, and discipline that 99% of the population simply does not have. You should be incredibly proud. But once you cross that finish line, the rules of the game fundamentally change. You have to let go of the scarcity mindset that got you there. So the next time you log into that banking app and look at that 6-figure balance, don't look at it as a monument to your past frugality. Look at it as a tool for your future. Right-size your cash buffer, build your tax shields, get the money into the market, whether through a lump sum or dollar cost averaging, and finally allow yourself to use the leverage you worked so relentlessly to build. You won the defensive game. Now it is time to step onto the field and play offense.